right here, number 232. You can jump on board the Unfiltered Revolution 24/7, 365, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, artist formerly known as Twitter, X, if you will, at Casey Stern. Hop up into the bio, get on the YouTube channel, subscribe for all the content, all the conversations, all the interviews. Get your questions, comments, DMs, replies, all that good stuff along the way as we here on episode 232 celebrate the $700 million man. Thank you to the Unfiltered band for being on board, and thank you to you wherever you are. Want to get into all the particulars, the deal, go into the Dodgers, the ramifications in the sport, and then for the fans who miss out both in Toronto after all the shenanigans yesterday and the Angel fans who now watch him nearby up the 5 freeway in real LA, if you will, and in town sort of, but not for their team, and moving forward for the next decade as the one of one, as the Shohei Ohtani show, but in LA, in actual Hollywood with the Dodgers. We've got a lot to cover here on this historic day for this sport and the finality, if you will, on what has been a bandied about and talked about and hubbub-laden conversation and saga with the free agency of Shohei Ohtani going back to the past year and through the trade deadline and through the injury and whatnot. And we will cover it all. We are here large part thanks to our good friends at Bet Online. They're your number one source for your sports betting needs. They got latest odds, lines, matchup reports, basketball, football, boxing, golf, whatever you got, they've got it for you. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way to get all your wagers, live betting, favorite casino and card games, all available right now, right from your phone. Head over to the website, use your mobile device to sign up today, get in on all the action. Remember, though, to use this promo code. It's BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. It is Bet Online where the game starts as we get started here. I'm not here to say I told you so in terms of Ohtani signing with the Dodgers, because I don't think that makes me any kind of a genius, but I have stuck with this even through all the reports about him flying to Toronto, both here on this podcast and through social media, with the fact that, to me, the reason why I always felt confident that he would become a Dodger more than anything else was that when you take down and you strip away all the particulars and the unknowns of who he was meeting with and how much money this would end up, even though we knew it would be oodles of cash. We thought 500, maybe 550, perhaps somehow 6. Well, how about being $100 million off with no opt-outs? And we'll get into all of that. But it made the most sense for the Dodgers to be the right team because he already lives there and is comfortable and wants to be in that area. You get a chance to be in Hollywood, and he is a guy in Shohei Ohtani who is one of one, as I say, in almost every respect, and certainly first and foremost when you think about the two-way player that he is and the talent that he presents in this sport. But when you take the fact that he supersedes and stands outside of and steps outside of that baseball box that a lot of baseball players live in, where they can't get that popularity and they can't make that money off the field. And a lot of that is because the individual nature of things is taken away from them. They're not able to do a lot of the things that you can in other sports, like in the NBA, to try and individualize and to step outside, even though players are doing a better job at that now, despite what the league may want or allow than they did years ago. We don't really have that transcendent type of player. It's why I've always joked about even a Mike Trout, Shohei's now former teammate, guy who has been at times the best player in this sport, going to be a Hall of Famer, one of the greats ever, is somebody who there are a lot of NBA fans who don't like baseball or NFL fans that don't like baseball, that they don't know who Mike Trout is. But everybody knows who Shohei Ohtani is. And his ability to make money outside of the aspect of baseball and the game, what the Dodgers present on the field, the money they have, where they are, and the other teams that were involved, and knowing that New York was not going to be a factor in here. So you didn't have to worry about Steve Cohen's money, because that would have been a factor, because he certainly can afford any kind of paycheck that he wants. And you don't have the Yankees, who have the prestige and certainly also have tons of money to spend. You didn't really have that kind of a battle, with no offense, when you're looking at the Giants. Well, if you want to be in the area, why would you go to San Francisco and lovely and love it? And it's maybe my favorite park in the league, but over what you could be and do with Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts with the Dodgers didn't make sense. Why would you go there instead of Toronto, where it just doesn't make sense? You wouldn't be as good of a team. and you wouldn't be seemingly in a spot that would make you as comfortable, considering you already know you have comfort being the last decade in this area. And the Angels, which clearly were never a factor for me, people wanted to always kind of play that out. But one of the reasons why, going back, and you can go back in this podcast and go from months ago, I have said there has never been a more mishandled trade deadline in, forget the 20 years I'm covering these, but in this sport in totality, than what the Angels and Artie Moreno did with Shohei Ohtani, and we'll get to that in a bit. But the Dodgers always seemed like the best fit. It always seemed to make the most sense. So this, to me, clearly not a surprise and something I thought inevitable. Now, when the report came out, he's on a flight to Toronto, which we thought was accurate at the time, then yeah, I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'd be stunned, but this is amazing for Jays fans, and we'll get to them as well. So the Dodgers are the choice. I don't want to get into yet how Ohtani broke that news on his own, because I will, and I want to talk about all that. But let's get to the money. $700 million, 10 years, no opt-out. Tons of deferrals to put it on the back end so that the Dodgers can be able to field a competitive team, work with the luxury tax, and have the ability to go out year after year and have a chance to win a championship. And details, at least as far as the time that I'm doing this and putting this out in early evening, not out yet on exactly how that all unfolded. But it was reported it was Shohei's idea. And at $700 million, clearly he got some to spare. I'm sure he's going to be doing just fine over the first few years of this deal. But however you slice it, the idea of what he's going to make on the field is just insanity. I think one of the posts I saw was like $50 a second. I mean, it is amazing the amount of money that this man just got paid. More than the Messi deal. Forget about just in this sport, more in any sport that we have seen. But when you take one specific thing into context, it will blow your mind. And I think you need to sit with this and really kind of listen to this out loud 3 times, because they say there's that psychology of you got to hear something 3 times and then it sticks. With some of us who are stubborn like me, many more than that. Mike Trout, who has long been seen as the best player in the sport, had the most money on his deal that we've seen in any contract at 12 years and $426 million. Shohei Ohtani is getting paid almost $300 million, more than Mike Trout for 2 less years. Shohei Ohtani is getting paid almost $300 million more than Mike Trout in 2 less seasons. Shohei Ohtani is getting almost $300 million freaking more dollars than Mike Trout in 2 less years. Aaron Judge just signed a deal a year ago, biggest part of the free agent offseason. The Yankees brought him back, was it 9 for $360? The entirety of the deal, $360 million. So we are basically saying nearly, if with, obviously some quirks to it, but if you do it in my TI-82 in my head, he's basically an Aaron Judge better than Mike Trout. Like there's 2 players in him, and we know there are clearly as a pitcher and a hitter, but this coming off the injury, which I'll delve further into in a minute, now more, almost $300 million more than Mike Trout. That is absolutely crazy. And it's not wrong, because he's one of one, and there is no price tag. What this guy does for your team and who he is in this sport, there's no way you could say it's wrong. And people are going to say, well, that's way too much money for any player. It's way too much money for anybody. Unless you're a firefighter or a police officer or a teacher, it's probably way too much for anybody, right? When we're talking about, okay, no matter what you do for a living, it's insanity. Okay, great. But in the world of where we live, and when we see how athletes get paid, and we think about what he does and how different he is and how he differentiates himself from everybody else who is walking the planet Earth or ever has in this sport, because I've said this, he may not go down as the greatest of all time when you look at the numbers he ends up compiling, depending upon how healthy he is, and God willing he will be. But regardless of what numbers he compiles or where he ranks on leaderboards or how whatever, we have never seen a player who can do what Shohei Ohtani can do ever in this sport. I don't care if you're a Ted Williams guy or gal, or Babe Ruth, or my dad was Willie Mays was his favorite player, or who it is to you. I really don't. Ken Griffey Jr., you can name them. I don't care who it is. They've never been able to do what Shohei can do. Mike Trout can't do what Shohei can do when healthy. No one can ever do or has ever been able to do what this man can. And when you're that level of one, then there is no price tag, and that's the $700 million. But the fact that he gets it with no opt-out, that, is certainly part of this, because, hey, look, you're going to pay all that money. I am going to then say to you that I am here. This is where I'm going to be for the next decade. This is where I'm going to finish out my career. This is where I am going to stay. And that's why I'll defer all that money. And that's why we don't need an opt-out clause. And that is a huge bit of news in all of this. And I hope people understand that, because all of us felt in whatever deal he got, there would be an opt-out. Now, one of the reasons why is because of the injury. One of the reasons why we thought there would clearly be an opt-out would be because, hey, when I go back and show you that I can pitch, right, and I go out there and show you that I can make 30 starts or 25 or whatever it's going to be, or however many innings you need to see in year 2 of this deal, right, then I'll get an opt-out after year 2 or 3, and then I'll go out there and I'll really be what I would have been before that injury occurred, because we thought that injury was going to play a huge role in the amount of money he made. As soon as that injury happened, we're like, okay, well, he's not going to make 500, 600, maybe it'll be 4. And then we saw that kind of ticking up based on, the hubbub and some of the noise that was coming in, that it would be at least 500, or it might be 550, or it might be 600. Nobody had 700 on their bingo card. And part of that was because, A, we thought an opt-out, and B, more importantly, because we thought all of this would be surrounding, hey, look, how much he can pitch and what just happened with this injury. And none of that seemed to matter at all. That is the greatness and the level of which Ohtani is seen. Again, let me remind you, sorry, you can't say this enough. Imagine being a baseball player that is that damn good that you're getting paid almost $300 million more than Mike Trout for 2 less seasons. Imagine that. It is hard to fathom. Let's talk about the journey. Shohei Ohtani was secretive. He didn't want to tell you where he was meeting. I had said to you this whole time, and anybody else who said otherwise, I mean, I don't understand people who really thought that there was going to be some issue that Dave Roberts was talking about that they met. Look, maybe they said don't say anything, but at the end of the day, he wasn't going to determine what he was going to do with the rest of his life based on the fact that the manager was excited he had a meeting with the greatest player perhaps that's ever played this sport. I can't imagine that. I couldn't imagine that was an issue, and it wasn't an issue. Wasn't going to be an issue here. But Shohei ticked off a lot of people who wanted information. They want to be in the know. But if you're getting $700 million, $700 million, do you think you care how secretive you were? Do you think you care that you don't want to tell anybody the dog's name, which clearly must have been Dodger or Lasorda or who knows what? It is, and always was, and always will be, the prerogative of any free agent athlete, like it is any human being or any person in any walk of life, to do what they want and make their own choices about their own life when you're dealing with their future. And it is the same case, even on a much grander stage here for Ohtani, who did nothing wrong in this process and should not have gotten the flack and crap. Clearly, I have no problem, and I said this yesterday, when people were reporting, hey, we wish we knew. Hey, it would be great if we understood. Hey, maybe it's better for your brand if you did this. His brand is just fine. $700 million. Crazy. And deserved. A lot of people caught in the crossfire here. We're not talking about Bob Nightingale and John Morosi and all the stuff that happened yesterday. Talking about the fans in Toronto first. Let's go there. If you're in Toronto, and yesterday, as I do this here on a Saturday, so the Freaky Friday, as I'm calling it, with the whole thing with the flight, and he's going to sign there, doesn't happen. As much as you're disappointed, you probably never really thought you had a chance to beat out the Dodgers here, if you're being honest. And the fact that your team was that invested and that involved, whether they got used to raise the price here or not, and seemingly that was part of what happened. And that happens all the time. That's not an anti-Toronto thing. It's not an Ohtani or a Nez Bilello's agent. That happens all the time. You need other bids. It's what's made Scott and Scott Boras, he's so amazed so many times over the years where there's like a bidding war that doesn't exist and he's getting players extra years that you never thought that they would get. but you need those other folks at the poker table to get those bids to be higher. Whether they were used or not, if that doesn't happen yesterday, you probably have Jays fans who can stomach this a little bit better. Hey, we really went for it. Look, we were in it. Look what we were willing to do. Look at the amount of money we're willing to pay. Hey, our owners are going to go spend. Hey, we're going to get better. We'll find another way. That's pretty damn cool. But because of what happened yesterday, they don't get to enjoy any of that. And it's Heartbreak City across the board. I mean, I can even imagine being a Jays fan and what those hours were like before the quiet, before the storm of he's at home in California and he's not on a flight to Toronto. And it's the dude from Shark Tank instead, of all people. I can't even imagine the heartbreak fan I feel for you. I also feel for the group that is not going to be talked about here at all because of the situation in Toronto that happened yesterday, because of the secrecy and what is surrounded it, because of the monumental amount of money in this deal and how much there is to talk about, and that is the fans of the Angels. The fans who have dealt with Artie Moreno for years, fumbling and bumbling everything with this franchise as he has. The fans of a team where the owner didn't even want the team, then decided he didn't want to sell, wanted to keep the team, then decided based on basically a 2-week stretch heading into the deadline that he was going to take the Ohtani off the board, and you didn't even get and maximize the one of one. Look at what he just did in this free agent market. Now imagine what he must have been able to get for you as a rental, even as a guy who was healthy then at the time and pitching and hitting and doing them in the same game and all the amazing things he was doing. Now you have to feel even worse about what, again, is the worst handling at a trade deadline that has ever happened in the history of this sport. And how about if you're the Angel fans now having to watch him next door? How about if you're the Angel fans having to know that your team, and I love Ron Washington, and you're going to have that team ready as they can. They got some young players, and you got Mike Trout, but you're going nowhere. You're going nowhere fast. You're not Houston. You're not Texas in that division. Got no idea how you're going to beat those teams. I don't know what the hell really Seattle is doing right now necessarily, but I don't even know you're going to beat them if things roll right. Who knows what's going to happen, but you're certainly never going to get attention, and you're never going to be the Dodgers. And Mike Trout is now sitting there, and he's Tom Hanks in Castaway with Wilson all by himself, except he don't even have Wilson. He's on an island by himself in Mike Trout, who they should trade. I said it. And he should want to be traded. I said it. And so should you. And I feel for the Angel players. I imagine the difference between the Dodger players in that room realizing they're getting Ohtani and the Angel players who just watched this whole thing slip away. And you got nothing for him. You got jack for him. In the most jacked up handling of a deadline in the history of Major League Baseball. $700 million. And again, imagine a world. Take yourself back 5 years ago, Mike Trout. Take yourself back to any reality you've ever sat watching that man, Mike Trout, play the game of baseball. And imagine somebody being good enough in your lifetime to make $300 million or so more in 2 less seasons. Amazing. Hollywood got another star. Indeed. You can catch us here and all of the stars and all of the guests and all of the conversations and everything else that we've got going on. 232 now episodes deep, courtesy of Unfiltered, Apple, Spotify, every week podcast. Of course, artists formerly known as Twitter. X, if you will, at Casey Stern. Hop in the bio. That's where you get on the YouTube channel. Go subscribe, join, comment, have conversations along the way. And we'll talk much, much more as this offseason rolls on. Congratulations to Shohei Ohtani on a historic day.